Mets top pitching prospect Matt Allan has to go under the knife again for what is essentially a second Tommy John surgery. What does this mean when it comes to the hierarchy of pitching prospects in the Mets farm system? I'm going to discuss that and more on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Now, bad news over the weekend for the Mets when it comes to their farm system. Matt Allan suffered another setback, and he had to go under the knife again. If you're not aware of who Matt Allan is, the Mets drafted him in 2019, third-round pick, but really was a first-round talent. This was supposed to be the steal of the draft. Back when Brodie Van Wagenen was the GM, he was widely heralded for his ability to overslot pay Matt Allan to get him to agree to sign with the Mets, forego college, go right into the farm system. And honestly, for this kid, probably a good thing that he did that because he got his money up front a little bit on that signing bonus. I hope that he has been able to put that away. Not saying his career is over, but certainly the trajectory of where he's going is suddenly in a bad place because first you have the Tommy John, right? He throws some pitches, 2019, the only time we really saw him. Then you have Tommy John, normal timetable for that. All of a sudden, 2021, he gets the ulnar nerve transposition surgery, which is a common surgery. I believe Steven Matz got it. Others have as well, where after a Tommy John, sometimes they have to move some nerves around. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's a very common follow-up to Tommy John if a guy's arm just still isn't feeling quite right. And then usually after that surgery, all right, you're good to go, normal timetable, you follow the process. Again, we had not really been seeing much of him. Apparently he was throwing in January, something was wrong, and he had to get UCL revision surgery, which essentially a second Tommy John, at least as it relates to the timetable for his return. You basically cross off 2023, another year loss for Matt Allan. And, I mean, this guy just cannot stop dealing with blows here. And you feel awful for him because, he had so much talent. And obviously you feel bad as a fan, just selfishly wanting to see him, pitch in a Mets uniform. But for this kid to have, setback after setback after setback, you have to wonder what happened here. Now I'm trying to pull up exactly what Matt Allan's age is at this point. You're looking at a player who, again, you're drafted in 2019. He will turn 22 in April, and his minor league career just hasn't gotten started. He threw some pitches when he was 18 years old all the way back then and showed a lot of promise, and we saw him in a spring training start where he looked great as well. But, I mean, now you're at this point with him where it's hard to continue to hold him in such high regard because you just don't know when he's going to get back on the mound. And you also have to wonder at a certain point, too, is this a botched surgery? Was his first Tommy John, performed incorrectly? I know personally, as a Miami Heat fan, I'm currently watching Victor Oladipo on the NBA side kind of make his return to being some semblance of what he was when he was an all-star, and obviously different sports, different injuries, but this was a guy that was an all-NBA player, a couple years back with the Pacers. He had an injury, he gets surgery, and basically they screwed up the surgery entirely. He tried to play through it, he tried to feel right again, and it wasn't working, and he got back on the court but wasn't himself, and it wasn't until he was able to get that proper surgery, get everything fixed up, that he's been able to find some semblance again of who he was. Matt Allan is in this position where you really almost want to find out behind the curtains what happened to that first surgery, because as much as we still know Tommy John is a very serious injury, but it's also a surgery that has been damn near perfected. I was texting Arm Layton from Just Baseball today. He obviously does all of our scouting, does our top 100, and I just texted him, the report that this had happened to get his take on it. Maybe that was yesterday. Regardless, he was just kind of blown away by it. He said, only 10% of these surgeries at this point aren't successful, and he's falling into that 10% now. Now, granted, that's still a pretty good amount of pitchers that aren't able to come back, but generally speaking, or even if come back, it'll come back at a much later date than anticipated. But when you have a prospect of this stature at this age, right, you just think that these are the type of athletes that everything's going to be good, that he's going to come out of this, he's going to be throwing harder. There's been so many Mets prospects like Jacob deGrom, like Steven Matz, like even a Zach Wheeler, who started his career before needing the Tommy John, but wasn't really established as a big league starter, and then eventually got there, where you just sort of expect that a pitcher of this caliber will be able to bounce back off Tommy John, and I would not give up on him entirely. Part of why I wanted to discuss this today is to get into the fact that it's disappointing, but also say I'm not giving up on Matt Allan. At the same time, you just don't know when you can dream about him anymore. I mean, at this point, maybe you see him in 2024. Is that the beginning of 2024? You hope. And what kind of season could he possibly have at that juncture? Are we looking at Matt Allan is throwing 100 innings? I pretty much doubt it. So what level does he go to at then, 22, 23 years old? Is he starting his rehab process in a AA? Is he starting in Port St. Lucie and they're taking him really slow? And what type of pitcher or type of hitters is he going to face at this point? He has become an absolute question mark. Granted, he could come back from Tommy John, right? From this surgery now, the revision, I guess, the UCL revision surgery, whatever you want to call it. He could be amazing in 2024. He could start off in St. Lucie and it looks pretty good. Maybe they bump him to Brooklyn to get him some better competition. And maybe it's a slow process, but he's able to face, more of the upper echelon of hitters by season's end. Maybe he gets a cup of coffee in AA, and then suddenly look at 2025. He's beginning the season there. He's quick to Syracuse, and maybe his amount of minor league time is short because he's going to mature as an athlete. His body's going to continue to mature, and he can, when he finally gets right, hit the ground running. But everything's an if now. And with that, you have to look at this farm system a lot differently, because we always sort of just said, all right, well, whenever he's back, he's their best guy. Now I don't think that's the case. I think that you have to knock him down a peg or two when it comes to Mets prospects. Where are you going to put him in a top 30? I know we're going to do that before opening day this year, and we're still kind of trying to figure out exactly when Jordan Grossman and I are going to go through our list and break all that down for you on a Friday Farm Report. But I'll tell you this, the guys that I'm about to talk about, I think I have to put them above Matt Allan right now when it comes to the Mets' top prospects, because at least I know they're going to pitch. We're going to discuss some of those names in just a minute. First, though, I want to tell you about FanDuel. This year, the only app that you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited that they've become our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because again, they're the #1 sports book in America, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to the point spread to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sports book of the NFL. So if Matt Allan is no longer the top prospect in the Mets system when it comes to pitchers, who is? There's a couple of names that jump out to me, and the first one is a guy that the Mets just drafted this year, Blade Tidwell. This guy's unbelievable. Okay, he was supposed to be a first-round pick, ends up falling to the Mets because in his final season in Tennessee, he had some shoulder soreness issues that kept him out early on in the season. Ends up getting drafted 52nd overall and was paid over slot at $1.85 million. The Mets obviously loved him, and he showed some real stuff down the stretch. Made 5 appearances, and he also pitched in the playoffs for the St. Lucie Mets, helping them win their Florida State League Championship. He was great in that run, 9 2/3 scoreless over 2 playoff starts with 13 strikeouts. You got a fastball sitting in the mid-90s and has even touched as high as 99. A slider that is, right up there with any slider in the Mets system. I know Baseball America says it is the best slider in the Mets system. So you have that to pair with the fastball. He still needs a third pitch, but if he can develop that this year, this is a guy coming out of college that can fly through the Mets farm system, and boy, would they love to see it. I don't know where he starts this year. I would imagine you put him in Brooklyn and give him a long taste of high A, and he could be pitching in double A. And so if he can get a little bit better with the command, if he can get a third pitch under his belt to pair with the fastball and the slider so he can really round out his arsenal as a starting pitcher, Blade Tidwell is a guy that you're not going to see this year, but if he has a big season where he sort of launches himself a bit here, you're looking at 2024 as realistic. That could be. Now, he might need more time. It might be 2025, but again, if he can get to double A and show something this year, no reason to think that he can't be up in short order, and the Mets need a prospect like that to hit in a big way. So I think this is now the top prospect in the Mets system when it comes to pitchers. You look at Baseball America's scouting grades on his pitches. If you give his fastball a 60 grade and his slider a 60 grade. So how that system works, it's a 20-80 scale. If you're at 70 or 80 when it comes to the grade of one of your pitches, or really any type of a tool, that's well above average. But 60 is still above average. Also, his control's at a 50, so that's about average. He improves that control. That's only going to take those pitches that already have that stuff that you want. The fastball, the velo's already there. If he's locating it better, the high spin slider, if that is located a little more and he can get some more strikeouts but limit his walks, you could be looking at a pitcher that has 2 elite offerings right now. The changeup and the curveball are both in the 40s. The curveball is graded at 40, the changeup at 45. You want to see those pitches tick above average, and or at least one of them, and you'll feel better about him being able to stay as a starting pitcher. But if anything else, he's going to be a nasty reliever one day, and I honestly don't think that the reliever risk is too high here. I like Tidwell a lot. Now you move on to Calvin Ziegler, second-round pick in 2021. He just turned 20 years old in October. A guy that I think is pitching for Team Canada in the World Baseball Classic. He's really interesting, all right? And the Mets love him. He is a spin rate darling. This past year, 4.44 ERA over 46 2/3. That was over, I believe, 16 starts. So they were really sort of watching him, limiting him, only letting him go out there for a couple of innings at a time. And he's also effectively wild at this point. 70 strikeouts, though. So 70 strikeouts in that many innings. You're looking at 13.5 strikeouts per 9. But he's walking nearly 7. So 36 walks in that span. That's an issue. You got to refine the control. But he also has some pretty good velo. Is averaging at 94 for the fastball. Touches 96. It's got that rising action up in the zone. You pair that with an absolutely devastating curveball. He really works north to south with his pitches. Tried to get a splitter going this year. Not quite the offering you want it to be yet, but it would give you another pitch that's maybe a little bit harder between the fastball and the curveball that can drop in another direction. We don't know if he's ever going to be able to develop a pitch that goes east to west like a slider, but for now, he's looking at fastball, curveball, splitter as his offerings. Another guy where you would think, if nothing else, could be a nasty reliever one day, but the Mets want to keep him in the rotation. He just has to learn how to control his pitches. He's a very raw prospect, but he might have the highest upside of anybody in this farm system, especially if we're maybe tacking Matt Allan a little bit on the upside because we just haven't seen him. So before you'd always say Allan is the highest upside, maybe that is now Ziegler, or maybe Tidwell is the best prospect. But there's still one more guy I want to discuss today who I think ultimately when I really rank my prospects, because you still have to kind of balance when are they coming up, how effective can they be when they come up, like depending on the timeline, that does weigh into where prospects rank a little bit, but you also always want to project forward and project upside. So I'm not sure if I can put this guy ahead of Matt Allan yet. I would put Ziegler and Tidwell above Allan now, and I think a lot of publications, I saw Baseball America did that. I even saw MLB.com has already done that. I don't think I'm ready to put Dominic Hamill above Matt Allan, but I'm willing to put some time in diving into the numbers on Hamill and seeing if I could put him there, right? I could foresee myself maybe changing my opinion before we put out the top 30 because I love the fact that this is a guy who I really believe is trending towards being a piece of this rotation in the not too distant future. We've discussed him on recent shows, but I'll reiterate the numbers. 3.25 ERA and 119 innings pitched, 145 strikeouts. So he did get to double digits when it comes to strikeout per nine. That's always something I'm looking at, particularly in the minor leagues. Does this guy have swing and miss stuff? Hamill has that, and to be able to throw 119 innings. I mean, that's completely different than anything else we're talking about. Matt Allan, when are we going to see that? Ziegler, last year didn't even break 50. Tidwell just getting his start. So here you go with Hamill, a guy that was able to get to high A last year and was very successful. He had a 3.84 ERA in low A, gets up to high A, pitched to a 2.59 ERA. So really nice stuff from Hamill. This season, I don't know if they're going to kind of build from where he was and start him in Brooklyn, or they're going to be a little more aggressive and maybe give him a full season in Double A. I think that's what I would do. If he does have some struggles, good. Let him adjust. Let him make those changes he has to. And if he can, end up not sinking in Double A, he can eventually swim and have a good season. Well, now you're looking again 2024 at a guy that has some real upside. Jose Butto should be mentioned because he still probably has the best changeup in the Mets system, has great control of his pitches, and was very good in AAA Syracuse. He's just not quite the same prospect as these other guys, but that doesn't always mean everything. Tyler McGill was never considered a top tier prospect until he was up at the big league level. So we'll see. We'll see what Butto could eventually do. You never know what happens. We could be looking up in July and the Mets rotation is ravaged by injuries and Jose Butto is making starts every fifth day and thriving, and suddenly you look at him a lot differently. The Mets system is definitely trending in the right direction, but a lot of work has to be done, particularly adding pitching depth to the minor leagues. So I'm sure that's still a focus when it comes to the draft. It's not necessarily a focus on the trade market because the Mets are now consistently buyers, not sellers, but they got to be a little bit better at bringing in some pitching talent. They're a little bit more position player heavy when it comes to their top prospects. But also, they're trying to develop a pitching lab where they're pouring money into driveline guys and all these different people that are supposed to help these guys shape their pitches, find out the arsenal that works for them at a young age, and you carry that through their entire development up to the big leagues. You never know. Maybe the Mets become a pitching factory themselves in a couple of years, and some of these guys like a Christian Scott or others that maybe we don't talk about as much find themselves in that position where they can contribute in a big way at the big league level. I have a little bit more, though, before we close. That's going to be all when it comes to prospects, but some more news. Carlos Beltran coming back to the Mets. We'll get to that in a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, which got through the holidays. I know my goal was to eat a little bit healthier this year, and if you're like me and you want to change your diet a bit, the best snack I can tell you about is Built Bars because, for one, covered 100% real chocolate, so they're going to cure, they're going to assuage that sweet tooth you have when you have those cravings with unbelievable flavors like the churro, the peanut butter brownie, the coconut almond. These bars taste like candy bars while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy, only 130 calories. It's only 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box. For years, I've been telling you to go to Built.com, but if you want to, you can now just go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Head to your Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of the cookies and cream, the double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. Or if you're close to a Sam's Club, go in, grab yourself a 13-bar box with their hit flavors, the brownie batter and the churro. You can thank me later. Go to the store to buy Built Bar today. All right, let's close out the show with some MLB news. Carlos Beltran is back with the Mets. We don't really know the capacity yet, but he'll be working under Billy Epler in the Mets front office. He is leaving, yes, and leaving that network TV job to come over, go across town, working from the Yankees to back working with the Mets, and he's going to contribute in some way. This is significant, though, because we all remember Carlos Beltran was supposed to be the manager of the Mets not too long ago. He got caught up in the Astros sign-stealing scandal. The Mets decided to let go of him. We'll never know what he was going to be as a manager, but maybe this is the first step, if not to that, of just ingratiating him back into the franchise. And that's important for a couple of reasons. For one, the guy's a great baseball mind, and I'm sure having him part of the team in any capacity is going to help you. I mean, I thought he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Not going to be now, but he is on the ballot. He's going to trend in the right direction. He will be a Hall of Famer at some point. I think voters will get over the sign-stealing scandal and realize that there's people that are, in the Hall of Fame that have done way worse. And Beltran will eventually get that nod. And if you look at his career numbers, he might go in with the Mets cap. So it's important to mend that fence, to get him back into the good graces of this organization. It's another tip of the cap to Steve Cohen for running this franchise the right way. And not only seeing a guy that can help you, but also seeing a guy that's very significant to the franchise and someone that, who knows, if he goes into Cooperstown with the Mets cap, you probably got to retire number 15. I know that there's fans that will sort of look back on what he did with the Mets and they boil it down to a single strikeout. But if you really look at the numbers closely, this is one of the best players in franchise history. I'm happy to see that he's back with the blue and orange. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Tomorrow's show, hopefully, news keeps getting in the way, but we will be discussing underrated additions the Mets have made this offseason. Jeff Brigham and Danny Mendick are the two main ones. We'll get into sort of across the board the talent that's been brought in that hasn't been talked about. So make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, @Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show, @Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by Lindsey Crosby. Locked On MLB Prospects is where you want to go to learn about the stars of tomorrow. Follow Locked On MLB Prospects on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts.